In 1942, just 48 hours before the premiere of Casablanca, Warner Brothers rushed to cut a dramatic scene showing Rick Blaine at his most ruthless, coldly trying to profit while a desperate man begged for his life to escape the Nazis. This was not the only moment from the film that was buried by Hollywood. From dangerous cocktails to secret dealings, several forbidden scenes disappeared, hidden for decades. The story behind Casablanca actually begins years earlier in 1938 with an American schoolteacher named Murray Burnett. He and his wife had traveled to Vienna to help Jewish relatives get their money out of Nazi-controlled Austria. Later, in a small French town, Burnett was struck by a nightclub scene featuring a black pianist playing jazz to an eclectic crowd of French locals, Nazis, and refugees, a vivid image that stayed with him. Back in the US, Burnett teamed up with writer Joan Allison, and by the summer of 1940, they had created a play called Everybody Comes to Rick's Star. Unlike the film, the story was set entirely in a cafe, and Rick Blaine was originally a lawyer who had abandoned his family. Even Ilsa, then called Lois Meredith, was portrayed as bold and openly flirtatious, quite different from the reserved Ilsa in the movie. Although the play carried a strong anti-Nazi message, Broadway producers rejected it, partly because they feared the character Lois would appear to have traded intimacy for important letters of transit. Ironically, this rejection became a blessing in disguise, as the play eventually landed in Warner Brothers' hands, setting the stage for the iconic film. The timing was remarkable. Warner Brothers received the script just a day after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. Irene Diamond, a story editor at the studio, immediately saw its potential and described it to producer Hal B. Wallace as sophisticated hokum. Wallace recognized an opportunity to create a film that would resonate deeply with a wartime audience. Warner Brothers paid an unprecedented $20,000 for the rights to the unproduced play, a huge sum for unknown writers, which sparked skepticism around Hollywood. Yet the timing was perfect. With America now fully engaged in World War II, Warner Brothers aimed to make socially relevant films that mattered. Despite the investment, expectations for the film were modest. It was just another project in a busy schedule. Humphrey Bogart, who was cast as Rick, viewed the role as routine. It was one of 4 films he made that year, and he did not take it especially seriously. Ingrid Bergman, cast as Ilsa, accepted the role only because other desired projects were unavailable. Filming began on May 25, 1942, despite the script being far from complete. Only the first act was ready, and the writers, Julius and Philip Epstein along with Howard Koch, scrambled to finish the screenplay. Just 3 days before shooting, the draft was still being finalized, and 2 weeks into filming, scenes were being written overnight and rushed to the set each morning. By August, the script had ballooned to 126 pages, prompting producer Wallace to demand cuts. One cafe scene where Rick and Ilsa meet was rewritten 7 times in a single day, adding to the chaos. Yet amid the turmoil, magic emerged. Some of the film's most famous lines, like "Here's looking at you, kid," were improvised by Bogart on set. The iconic closing line, "Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship," was not part of the original script. It was added after filming had wrapped, with Wallace paying Bogart a then staggering $50,000 to return to record it. This ever-changing script left many confused. Bergman, in particular, struggled to find her character's emotions, as director Michael Curtiz often shrugged off her questions with "I don't know, we'll see." The film's ending was undecided during the shooting of the famous airport scene. No one knew whether Ilsa would leave with Rick or with Victor Laszlo. To prepare, the crew filmed 3 different endings, one where she stays with Rick, another where she leaves with Laszlo, and a third where Rick dies. The final choice was made only after the cast and crew voted, just days before the film's November 1942 premiere. Even the supporting actors were uncertain about their roles. S.Z. Sakall, who played Carl the waiter, admitted he was so confused he didn't even know if his character was supposed to be a spy or just a bumbling servant. Bergman's frustration grew as she was unsure who her character would ultimately choose, forcing her to play her emotions in between 2 possibilities. One day, she came prepared to shoot a love scene with Paul Henreid, Laszlo, only for the director to switch it last minute into a heated argument with Bogart. She had to completely change her emotional approach on the spot. Her costumes also reflected the film's uncertainty. For the airport scene, she had 2 outfits ready, a glamorous fur coat if she stayed with Rick, and a plain travel suit if she left with Laszlo. She didn't find out which to wear until the very last moment and later joked that worrying about the coat took up more of her energy than the confusing script. Bogart himself had doubts about his romantic lead status at age 42, worried he was too old and not handsome enough for the role. "I don't know about this love stuff," he confessed to producer Wallace. Known mostly for gangster roles, Bogart was anxious about playing a lover. During the first week of filming, He drank heavily to calm his nerves, causing Curtiz to pause production for 2 days. His height also posed challenges. At 5 feet 8 inches, he was shorter than Bergman, which meant he had to wear platform shoes or sit on cushions during certain scenes. At one point, Bogart tripped over his platform shoes during a serious moment, causing the entire crew to break into laughter. Despite the chaos and uncertainty, Casablanca emerged as a timeless classic, filled with behind-the-scenes stories as fascinating as the film itself. The director of Casablanca, Michael Curtiz, added to the film's already chaotic production with his thick Hungarian accent, which often led to hilarious misunderstandings. In one instance, he asked for a poodle on set, and when someone brought him a dog, he angrily shouted, "Not a dog, a poodle," only to clarify he meant a puddle for a rain scene. In another moment, he told Bogart, "Make love to her with your hat on," confusing everyone until he added, "You know, like an American." He also asked for more extras by shouting, "Bring in the empty people," which baffled the crew until they realized he meant background actors. In November 1942, something changed everything. The Allied forces invaded French North Africa, putting the name Casablanca in headlines worldwide. Warner Brothers rushed to finish the film to capitalize on the buzz, wrapping up filming in just 71 days by August, incredibly fast for a major production. The famous airport scene was shot on a small soundstage using a wooden model plane and little people as extras to make the plane seem larger, with fog added to mask the set's limitations and ultimately enhancing the scene's mood. However, not everything went smoothly. Joseph Breen, head of the Production Code Administration, was strict about moral standards in films. He issued a memo with 13 required changes, objecting to sexual content, profanity, and even words like broad and damn. He demanded the removal of any suggestion that Rick's Cafe had a brothel upstairs and insisted on toning down lines like, "What in hell are you doing here?" to "What are you doing here?" He also had a scene with Renault adjusting his tie and implying sexual favors completely rewritten. Even Ingrid Bergman's costumes were scrutinized for modesty. Rick and Ilsa's romantic past had to be altered. Originally, they had an affair in Paris with scenes suggesting intimacy, but Breen had all such references removed. Flashbacks were rewritten with subtle cues, like Rick's line, "I remember every detail." The Germans wore grey, you wore blue, turning their past into poetic subtext. This forced the actors to convey emotions through glances and tone, adding to the film's emotional depth. Captain Renault's character was originally shown exploiting women for exit visas, but that too was changed under Breen's guidelines. Dialogue was edited heavily, from lousy bartender to very poor bartender, and lines like "Boss, ain't you going to bed?" became "Boss, ain't you going home?" Despite frustrations, these limitations led to more nuanced storytelling. Just 2 days before the premiere, director Curtiz cut a pivotal scene where Rick visits Victor Laszlo in jail and offers him the letters of transit, for a steep price. Rick's harsh words and greedy tone made him seem too cold, which test audiences disliked. The producers feared it revealed too much about Rick's motivations too early and cut the scene, preserving his mystery for the climax. The scene also clashed with Hays Code rules, which forbade depicting corrupt officials. Rick's jail visit might have implied shady police cooperation. Another scrapped moment involved Sasha the bartender tricking a German officer with a dangerous drink made of rum, absinthe, and gunpowder. Though humorous, it was cut to avoid delays, limit excessive alcohol portrayal, and avoid offending neutral nations. Bogart wanted the scene to stay, believing it added depth to Rick's character, but it was removed. Casablanca premiered on November 26, 1942, in New York, not because Warner Brothers saw it as a masterpiece, but to take advantage of current events. Just weeks earlier, Allied forces launched Operation Torch, invading French North Africa, including Casablanca. The timing gave the film immediate relevance. Tickets for the premiere cost $2.20, but none of the stars attended. Bogart stayed in California due to his fear of flying, and Bergman was busy with a Broadway play. Still, the film reached President Roosevelt, who watched it before meeting Churchill in Casablanca. Reportedly, the anthem scene moved him to tears. The general release followed on January 23, 1943, during the Casablanca conference. Despite the clever marketing, the movie didn't open as a blockbuster, earning $3.7 million in its initial run, good, but not extraordinary. The top movie of 1943, For Whom the Bell Tolls, made $11 million. Casablanca ranked 7th for the year. Its budget also ballooned from $950,000 to $1.039 million, partly due to the costly La Marseillaise scene, which alone added $100,000 but became iconic. Wartime challenges such as theater blackouts, fuel rationing, and export restrictions hurt its distribution. Critics liked it, praising Bogart and Bergman's performances and the film's themes of love, sacrifice, and resistance. A New York Times review called it thrilling, saying it made the spine tingle and the heart leap. In 1944, Casablanca stunned everyone by receiving 8 Oscar nominations, winning Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Bogart's nomination for Best Actor surprised many, including himself. He never saw himself as a romantic lead. Claude Rains, who played Renault, was nominated for Best Supporting Actor despite just 25 minutes on screen. On March 2, 1944, the film took home 3 Academy Awards. Director Michael Curtiz, despite his language barrier and chaotic methods, made history with a timeless classic that still resonates decades later. Leadership played a crucial role in Casablanca's enduring success. After World War II, however, the film faced significant alterations in its 1952 German release. About 20 minutes were cut from the original 102-minute runtime, leaving only 82 minutes. These edits removed all references to Nazis, drastically altering the story. One of the film's most iconic moments, Victor Laszlo leading the patrons of Rick's Cafe to drown out a Nazi song with La Marseillaise, was completely deleted. Major Heinrich Strasser, the Nazi antagonist, was removed entirely, and his role was vaguely replaced by references to unnamed authorities. The final airport scene, where Rick kills Strasser, was changed to a more subdued departure, stripping Rick's arc of critical emotional depth. These edits weren't mandated by German censors. Warner Brothers made them voluntarily to avoid controversy in post-war Germany. Nazi imagery, such as swastikas and salutes, was digitally erased or replaced, and dialogue was rewritten using vague terms like them or the authorities, leading to a confusing narrative lacking historical context. The film setting was shifted from wartime 1941 to an ambiguous time period, erasing World War II altogether. Victor Laszlo's backstory as a Czech resistance hero and concentration camp survivor was rewritten. He became Victor Larsen, a Norwegian atomic physicist fleeing Interpol. His resistance activities were replaced with invented science fiction involving delta rays. Ilsa's motivations were altered as well, no longer tied to the Nazi invasion of France, and Rick's background as a political idealist was softened to that of a neutral American expatriate. Captain Renault was reduced from a corrupt Vichy official to a generic police officer, and iconic lines lost their political nuance. When the uncut version finally aired on German TV in 1975, it stunned audiences who had only known the censored version. This sparked vital national conversations about censorship, memory, and confronting the Nazi past. Years later, in 1988, Casablanca stirred controversy again, this time in America, when media mogul Ted Turner released a colorized version on his TNT network. Turner's team spent over 4,000 hours and $450,000 using cutting-edge technology to add color, aiming to attract younger viewers. Every detail, from Ingrid Bergman's eyes to the shade of Rick's bar, was artificially enhanced. But the result was widely criticized. Rick's iconic white tuxedo was inexplicably rendered powder blue, the moody shadows were lightened, and a glaring error caused Ilsa's dress to change colors mid-scene. Critics and fans alike were outraged. Roger Ebert called it one of the saddest days in the history of movies, likening it to drawing a mustache on the Mona Lisa. The backlash escalated quickly. Outside theaters, protesters held signs reading "Ted Turner, Enemy of Cinema and Keep Your Crayons Off Casablanca." Rumors that Turner destroyed the original film negatives added to the public outcry, though they were untrue. The controversy grew so intense that Congress held hearings on colorization in 1989. Filmmakers like Woody Allen, Martin Scorsese, and Francis Ford Coppola condemned the practice as cultural vandalism, even buying full-page ads to protest it. Humphrey Bogart's son, Stephen Bogart, penned an open letter urging Turner to stop, saying, "If you don't like old movies, don't buy them, but don't ruin them for everyone else." By 1990, Turner quietly ended his colorization efforts. The colorized Casablanca VHS, once sold for $89.98, was pulled from shelves and became a rare collector's item. It was never released on DVD or Blu-ray and has since been buried in cinematic history, preserved as a cautionary tale about tampering with classic art.